I never thought my family would kick me out on Christmas Eve, but then again I never thought I'd end up secretly owning the company they worked for either. Life has a strange way of serving justice. My name is Emma Matthews, and this is how I went from being the family disappointment to the owner of a multi-million-dollar corporation. All because my parents couldn't see past their own ambitions. Growing up, our house was always filled with talk about Morrison Industries, the company where both my parents worked. Dad was a senior manager in operations, Mom handled investor relations, and my older brother Michael was being groomed for an executive position straight out of college. The company wasn't just their workplace. It was our family's entire identity. I was different. While they obsessed over quarterly reports and stock prices, I spent my time studying market trends and emerging technologies. I saw the future of business differently. The corporate ladder is outdated, I'd say at dinner. The real opportunity is in digital transformation and strategic acquisitions. Dad would scoff. What do you know about real business, Emma? You've never even worked in a proper company. Mom would add, if you just accept that position in accounting like we suggested, you could learn how things really work. But I had bigger plans. While working on my MBA, I started a small consulting firm specializing in digital transformation. I lived frugally, saved every penny, and quietly began buying shares in undervalued companies. My parents saw my modest lifestyle as proof of failure. They never questioned why I drove an old car while living in a small apartment, despite my consulting income. Look at Michael, Mom would say at every family gathering. Vice president at 28 company car corner office. That's what success looks like. Meanwhile, I was building something they couldn't see, slowly accumulating power they couldn't imagine. Everything changed 3 days before Christmas. I had just finalized the paperwork to acquire a controlling interest in Phoenix Digital, Morrison Industries' biggest competitor. The acquisition would be announced after the holidays, but I needed one last signature from Morrison's CEO himself. That same evening, my parents invited me for their annual Christmas dinner. The house was decorated with expensive ornaments, all purchased with Morrison Industries bonuses. Michael was there with his wife Sophie, showcasing his new Rolex, another corporate perk. Did you hear about the Phoenix Digital rumors? Dad asked during dinner, his voice tense. Word is they're planning something big. Roberts from accounting thinks there might be layoffs coming at Morrison. I kept my face neutral, taking a sip of wine. I knew exactly what was coming, not layoffs, but a complete corporate restructuring. One that would eliminate unnecessary management positions, including my father's. Thank God Michael's position is secure, Mom said proudly. The CEO personally promised him a promotion next quarter. Then she turned to me, her smile turning cold. Emma, maybe now you'll reconsider that accounting position? Before all the good jobs are gone. I started to respond, but Michael cut in. Actually, about that. He glanced at Sophie, then back at our parents. I have news. I've been offered the position of regional director. The CEO is announcing it at the company Christmas party tomorrow. Mom squealed with delight. Dad beamed with pride. Now that's how you build a career. Not like this consulting nonsense. He gestured dismissively at me. That's when I made my mistake. The corporate structure is changing, I said quietly. Those regional positions might not exist much longer. The room went silent. Michael's face turned red. What would you know about it? You're just jealous because I actually made something of myself while you play businesswoman in your tiny office. I'm just saying things aren't always what they seem. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. I won't have you trying to ruin your brother's moment with your bitter speculations. Just because you failed. I haven't failed, Dad. I'm actually quite suck. Get out, he roared, standing up so suddenly his chair fell backward. You're not family anymore. No daughter of mine would try to hurt her brother's career out of jealousy. Mom stood too, her face cold. Leave, Emma. And don't come to the company party tomorrow. You're not welcome. I looked around the table. Michael was smirking. Sophie stared at her plate. And my parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, stood there radiating disgust and disappointment. Something inside me hardened. I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and looked each of them in the eye. Merry Christmas, I said calmly. You'll see me sooner than you think. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. John, move up the timeline. Let's announce the acquisition at tomorrow's Christmas party. It's time they learned who really runs things now. Little did they know their perfect family Christmas was about to turn into a very different kind of celebration. One where the daughter they kicked out would become their boss's boss. But first I had some paperwork to sign. The Morrison Industries annual Christmas party was always an extravagant affair, but this year they had outdone themselves. The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballrooms sparkled with crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures glittered at every table, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. Standing in the lobby, I smoothed down my designer suit, a far cry from the modest clothes my family was used to seeing me in. "Everything's ready, Ms. Matthews," my assistant Thomas whispered, handing me a folder. "The board members are all here and the paperwork is prepared. Mr. Anderson will make the announcement at 9 p.m. sharp." I checked my watch. 8:30 p.m. After 10 years of careful planning, the next 30 minutes would change everything. I thought back to the day this all began when I was fresh out of college and my father had laughed at my business proposals. Digital transformation? Strategic disruption? That's not how real business works, Emma. He had sneered. Real success comes from climbing the corporate ladder, not your naive startup dreams. Now, a decade later, I owned controlling interests in 12 major tech companies, all operating under different names, all part of my carefully constructed plan. Phoenix Digital was just the final piece, the one that would give me control over Morrison Industries itself. Through the ballroom doors, I could see my family holding court near the main table. Mom was wearing a new designer dress, probably bought with the bonus she'd bragged about last week. Dad stood with his chest puffed out, already accepting congratulations for Michael's upcoming promotion. And Michael, dear arrogant Michael, was surrounded by sycophants, practicing his future regional director smile. "Your brother's going to be devastated," Thomas said quietly. I remembered all the times Michael had belittled my choices, how he'd taken credit for my ideas during college, how he'd always made sure our parents saw me as the failure. "He'll survive," I replied, though his new position might not be quite what he's expecting. At exactly 8:45, I nodded to Thomas. He slipped into the ballroom and approached Charles Anderson, Morrison Industries CEO. I watched through the door as Thomas whispered something in Anderson's ear. Anderson's eyes widened slightly, and he quickly excused himself from his conversation. "Ms. Matthews." He greeted me warmly as he entered the lobby. "Everything is prepared. Though I must admit, I'm still amazed you managed to keep this secret for so long. Your own family works here and they had no idea." I smiled. "Sometimes the best moves are the ones no one sees coming, Charles." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your father's position will be eliminated in the restructuring," I confirmed, along with several other redundant management roles. "This isn't personal, it's business." Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. This was both business and personal, shaped by years of dismissal and disappointment. "And your brother's promotion? Won't be happening. The regional director position won't exist in the new structure. He can interview for a lower management role if he wishes." Anderson checked his watch. "It's time. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath, thinking of last night's dinner, of my father's rage, of my mother's cold dismissal. "I've been ready for 10 years. The string quartet fell silent as Anderson stepped up to the microphone. My father beamed, probably expecting the announcement of Michael's promotion. My mother clutched her champagne glass, ready to toast her precious son's success. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anderson began, "I have an unprecedented announcement to make. As of this morning, Morrison Industries has been acquired by Phoenix Digital." The room erupted in murmurs. I saw my father's smile falter, saw Michael's face go pale. "But more importantly," Anderson continued, "I'm here to announce that Phoenix Digital itself is just one part of a larger corporation, Matthews Global Enterprises." Now my mother's hand began to shake, her champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "Please join me in welcoming our new chief executive, Emma Matthews." The silence was absolute as I walked into the room. Faces turned, jaws dropped, and somewhere in the crowd, my mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. I stepped up to the microphone, my heels clicking against the stage. "Thank you, Charles. As my first act as chief executive, I'd like to announce some structural changes." My father's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. Michael looked like he might faint. but I kept my voice steady, professional. Over the next 6 months, Morrison Industries will undergo a complete digital transformation. Many traditional management positions will be eliminated. I glanced at my father, and the regional director program will be discontinued effective immediately. Now I looked at Michael, watching his dreams crumble before his eyes. Those of you who can adapt to our new direction are welcome to interview for positions in the restructured company. Those who cannot. I let the sentence hang in the air. Well, change is never easy. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and nervous introductions. Board members who had ignored me at previous events now hung on my every word. Executives who had once dismissed me as Michael's unsuccessful sister now laughed at my mildest jokes. Finally, my family approached. Michael spoke first, his voice trembling. "Emma, about last night, and well, everything. I didn't mean." I held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Save it, Michael. HR will contact you about available positions next week." My mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Sweetheart, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have told me I was delusional, like every other time I tried to explain my vision?" "Emma," my father's voice was hoarse. "Please, can we talk about this? As a family." I looked at him for a long moment, remembering his words from last night. "You're not family anymore." "I have an early meeting tomorrow," I said coolly. "My assistant will be in touch about the changes to your department." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Dad? Merry Christmas." Later that night, alone in my penthouse office overlooking the city, I poured myself a glass of champagne. On my desk sat the family photo from last Christmas. The last time I had pretended to be less than I was. I opened my desk drawer and dropped the photo inside. Success, I had learned, wasn't about climbing corporate ladders or winning family approval. It was about having the courage to build something on your own terms, even if no one else believed in your vision. My phone buzzed. First my mother, then my father, then Michael. One by one I declined their calls. They had taught me an invaluable lesson about family and business. Sometimes the people closest to you are the last ones to recognize your worth. Tomorrow I would begin transforming Morrison Industries into something new, something better. And if my family couldn't adapt to the changes, well, that wasn't my problem anymore. I raised my glass to the city lights, to the empire I'd built while they weren't watching, to the sweet taste of success served cold. To family, I whispered and drank alone. The next morning, headlines across the business world announced the acquisition. Financial analysts praised the brilliant strategy of Matthews Global Enterprises' mysterious founder. My parents' phones exploded with calls from friends and colleagues who suddenly understood exactly who their unsuccessful daughter was. My assistant reported that my father spent the morning sitting shell-shocked in his office, staring at his soon-to-be obsolete title on the door. My mother had already called HR 3 times trying to schedule a meeting with me. Michael? He was updating his resume, finally understanding that his last name wouldn't save him anymore. As for me, I had a company to run. 10 years of careful planning had brought me here, and I wasn't about to let family drama distract me from what needed to be done. The digital transformation of Morrison Industries would proceed exactly as I had envisioned it, with or without their support. They had kicked me out on Christmas Eve thinking I was nothing. Instead, they had freed me to become everything they never imagined I could be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a promotion announcement and a glass of shattered champagne. 6 months after that Christmas party, Morrison Industries had transformed beyond recognition. The old, stuffy corporate offices were replaced with modern, open workspaces. Digital innovation centers replaced outdated departments. And the family that had once ruled the company? They learned some hard lessons about underestimating the daughter they'd dismissed. My father didn't adapt well to the changes. When his position was eliminated, he begged for any role in the new structure. "Please, Emma," he wrote in an email. "I've given 30 years to this company. It's all I know." I arranged for him to interview for a junior project manager position, the same level he'd once suggested I accept. He failed the technical assessment. Watching him clean out his office, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt no satisfaction. Only a quiet acknowledgement that karma has its own timing. My mother tried a different approach. She showed up at my office unannounced one morning, dressed in her finest outfit. Darling, she said, clutching her designer handbag. We need to talk about the family, about fixing things. I looked up from my laptop. Which family would that be, Mom? The one that kicked me out on Christmas Eve. She flinched. We were wrong, Emma. So wrong. But we're still your parents. Surely that counts for something. It counted for nothing when you thought I was a failure, I replied calmly. Why should it count for everything now that I'm successful? She left in tears, finally understanding that her conditional love had earned her conditional respect in return. Michael's story took an interesting turn. After his guaranteed promotion evaporated, he actually did something surprising. He worked hard. He took coding classes, learned digital project management, and quietly rebuilt himself from the ground up. 3 months into the transformation, he requested a meeting. I won't ask for special treatment, he said, sitting stiffly in my office. I just want you to know I understand now. What you built, how hard you worked while we mocked you. I was wrong, Emma. I'm sorry. It was the first genuine thing he'd said to me in years. There's an opening in the digital innovation team, I told him. Entry level. You'd report to someone 5 years younger than you, and your salary would be half what you made before. He nodded, swallowing his pride. I'd like to apply. Why? Because I want to earn something for once in my life. Really earn it. I studied him for a moment. Submit your application like everyone else. If you make it through the interview process, the job is yours. He did make it barely. Now he sits in a cubicle learning what I learned years ago. That real success comes from building something, not just inheriting it. The company Christmas party came around again exactly 1 year after my revelation.